Much of the build-up to the weekend is going to be about Galway Kilkenny for obvious reasons. Pearse Stadium, 2 o'clock Sunday. You're pretty uniquely placed to tell us about the dynamic here between Cody and Shefflin. What would you have said about their relationship as coach-player?
I'd say they had, I suppose no more than a lot of us, I personally feel that Henry would have had a very, very strong relationship with Brian. And again, look, I suppose the one thing I'd say, Brian never really had too many favourites in there, and if they were, we didn't know about it because he generally, in fairness to him, treated us all very, very evenly. But I'd say that if there was anyone there to be the special son, maybe, or the guy for a little bit of extra treatment, it was probably Henry to a point. But look, I suppose I say that tongue in cheek, but no, look, they had a very good relationship. But again, I think with what's coming there this weekend, I think it's just business for both of them. But I think there is going to be a little dynamic to that because Brian Cody just loves challenges. He loves he loves what he's doing, and he will look at this. They're going to Pearse Stadium next Sunday, knowing that if they can get a win, they're good. They're in a really strong position now to see out the Leinster campaign. And if he doesn't, in doing so, if he wins, he's going to put Galway under massive pressure. And I said it there earlier on in the week. I believe this is a must-win for Henry or this Galway team. They have to win the match because otherwise it now puts them in a real quagmire with other teams, and knowing that Dublin are in the last rounds and they may well have to win that, then it just puts a little bit of pressure on them. But I'm just looking forward to, I suppose we'd love to see manager cam for this match and just see our sideline cam or something like that. But no, look, I don't think there's no fear of sparks or anything of the sort. I don't think anyway, because I think the two boys have too much respect for each other. They will focus on what's important and they won't create a sideshow that's going to distract their players.
Would you have been considered one of Cody's favourites?
I might take the fifth on that one, Joe. Yeah, look, I don't know. Brian Cody was very good to me over the years, but look, his approach to me, I suppose, at times was I needed a bit of tight marking at times, and I make no bones about that. And Brian, I think Brian knew that as well. And I'll definitely say, on reflection, hand on heart, that that's what worked for me.
Fair enough. And when you say, Shefflin had a special place in his heart, so Shefflin's this unbelievable player, obviously, so we can see the greatness on the field. Presumably it goes beyond that. Was there something about Shefflin's personality or his work rate or his dedication Cody respected? Would you, are you talking about almost in the warm-ups where if Cody's having a quiet word with anyone, it'd be more likely to be Shefflin than others? Do you suspect they were talking more outside of training? But what is it that leads you to kind of say that maybe Shefflin was one of his favourites?
I think it was because Henry, I think if and I maybe said this before, if I put Henry Shefflin, Richie Hogan, TJ Reid, Richie Power maybe in a category and say we're going to analyse them, I think without a doubt the other three might have been a fraction more naturally talented, we'll say. But what Henry Shefflin had, and don't get me wrong, he had loads of talent, but what he had more than anything was an attitude and an application to work. And he was relentless in that, in terms of the injuries he came back from. And I think what Brian Cody would always say, and he said to us, hurling is hurling, guys, and you're in here because you're able to hurl. I would be able to put the ball over the bar if you gave it to me on my own. But it's ultimately how hard you work. And there was matches there where Henry Shefflin just literally grabbed Kilkenny by the scruff of the neck and dragged them along with him. Galway in 2012 in the drawn match, in the second half he done that. 2007 against Galway again, I remember him at centre forward. He just fronted up. Waterford 2008. There was matches like that where Henry Shefflin just outworked. And I'd say even privately, when he was recovering from injuries, we won't know half the stories about what he done and how hard he worked. And I think that's one thing that Brian Cody really respects in any player. And, maybe Tommy to that extent as well. They just had a competitive nature in them and a relentlessness in pursuit of what they wanted to achieve.
And would Cody have, say, a cut-off in the dressing room? I asked that, for instance, Alex Ferguson famously, if he wanted Ronaldo to stop dribbling so much, he'd point to Rooney next to him and say, you effing stop dribbling so much, Rooney. Or equally, if he wanted Ronaldo to work harder, he might point to gigs and say, you need to bloody work harder. Would he use Shefflin in that way?
No, not really. I think one thing Brian Cody always did is he trusted our hurling. He trusted our abilities, our skills and stuff like that. He would have very, definitely categorised that and took that as a given in terms of you're able to hurl. That's why you're in here. But ultimately, he had a little saying that was mean, hungry, ruthless people was what he wanted in his team. He said, I want the guys that are going to go in and get hurt. And I think he would have always brought it back to simple stuff when he wanted to poke us a little bit. That was the stuff he wanted. He did not want magic off any of us.
Okay.
But he just expected that was where it was. And I think, Henry was that. I think there's no doubt about that. And I can safely say hand on heart there were guys in that dressing room that inspired me because of that type of action. So they're the kind of lads that they're not talking, but by their actions, they drag you along with them. And you see him going in there and maybe mixing it up with 2 or 3 opposition players, and you kind of go, no, he can't be left in there on his own. And that was the way it was. And that's the stuff that Brian Cody put such a value on. That is his currency.
Yes.
And that is just, there's no compromise on that. And I think sometimes when, I think of guys that came and went out of the panel, that was the way it was. Maybe their work rate and their application just wasn't where he wanted it, and once he got that, the hurling would take over. That if you went in and you worked and got the ball, then your hurling instincts take over and off you go and you do what you do.
Do you feel like your values as a manager have been shaped by that experience under Cody, and therefore do you think Shefflin is very much forged through the Cody school? Like, you can't look at Martin O'Neill and not see Clough. Do you think you and Shefflin, are you formed in the image of Cody, or are you different, do you suspect?
You'll probably be different in your own. Obviously, everyone, you have to have your own philosophy. I can't be Brian Cody, and I can't be Henry Shefflin either, and vice versa. I think you obviously have to put your own spin on things, but you are a product of your environment, and you can put it down to say it's learned behaviour. What you're exposed to, the fundamentals. You'll obviously subconsciously maybe find yourself, drawing yourself towards those and putting huge value on those stuff because we saw the importance of that stuff. And obviously then it's your own philosophy and what you want to bring to it, and to be able to use different aspects of it to make, to shape your team or what you want your team to do. So I think without a doubt, I think that's the basics where Henry would have probably started, is just get the very, very simple things right with Galway, and then take it from there. Obviously, look, I suppose he done that with his own club in Ballyhale, albeit a very talented outfit. But there's no doubt about it. You are what you've experienced, and you can see where that stacks up and how that will benefit you when the pressure comes on, and how important that is. And if the fundamentals like that are right, then you can put your little add-ons to that.
Yeah. Kind of curious, at full time, will there be a handshake and a stop and a few words and smiles, or will it be millisecond of eye contact, handshake, off we go?
Yeah, I suppose it depends how much action is close to the two of them and what the score is. If it's hot and heavy there for the last couple of minutes and there's a bit of action nearby and there's a couple of frees, but it is a strange one because Henry Shefflin is ultimately, coaching a team against his own teammates and his own nephew. So that's a tough one, in fairness. But no, look, I no matter what happens, I think you'll definitely see the Brian Cody kind of stare maybe initially, and when the whistle goes, then he'll laugh and he'll shake hands with Henry. There's very deep respect between the two of them, and I think I think it would take something astronomical to change that, no matter what happens on Sunday.
Yeah, no, it would. I like it's going to be in its own way like a beautiful moment in some respects. Full time, those two embracing each other in a smile, and welcome to the big leagues, kid, from Cody, and the fact that he's still there. It's an amazing thing in so many different ways.
Absolutely, two competitors, Joe, and that's the big thing. I said you're going to see two competitors, and Brian Cody will relish the challenge of Henry, stepping up, because they're going toe to toe. That's the reality. The two boys are going toe to toe, and neither will want to blink, neither will want to come out second best. But I think there's obviously a very, very healthy respect there. But I think it's a great challenge for both of them. Brian will love not more than to say, I'm still here, I'm still standing. and maybe Henry to the same extent would love to say, you know, I've been able to take out a Brian Cody team, which in the broader scheme of things is great reassurance for him maybe as a manager.
Finally, who wins that one? Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Are you Team Shefflin or Team Cody?
Oh, I'm Team Kilkenny. Does that answer your question, Joe? But no, I was in at the match the weekend against Laois, and I think Kilkenny are in a good position to go up to Galway. I think a few years ago they got bullied up in Galway. They got physically out-muscled in Galway. I think they're in a good position. I think, you know, if you look at maybe Conor Whelan is a loss to Henry's team, but I'd be confident that Kilkenny are going to get out here. Might be by the slimmest of margins, but I think they're in a good position to get a win in Galway.